Welcome everyone to our Sunday afternoon special event, California Burning, a joint reading from two timely new anthologies on the effects of wildfire in California. But I am Katie Porter. I'm the Executive Director of Inlandia Institute, a nonprofit literary arts and cultural organization serving all of inland Southern California. But before we begin, Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseno, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. Now, I would like to turn it over to one of the editors who will get us started, Ruth Nolan. Welcome, Ruth. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everybody for being here, readers and audience. We have a stellar lineup of California poets, many who are multi-generational, second generational, first generational. Come as you are. This event is the second of two readings that Lucille Langday, my co-editor for Fire and Rain, Echo Poetry of California, and Molly Fisk, with her amazing new book, California Fire and Water, a Climate Crisis Anthology, have done. So on November 10th, we hosted a reading with the San Jose Poetry Center, and we had a very energetic reading and discussion afterwards. The scope of our after discussion was along the lines of what can poets do? Where do we go forward as we negotiate climate change, fires, and just so many things happening in our state? How do we unify and use poetry individually and collectively in our Golden State? So this is our Southern California version. And I'm very excited that all of you are here to read, and the audience, thank you for being here. Very quickly, how did this reading come to be? Well, in August, as the Dome Fire ripped through the Mojave Desert, where I live, I grew up there, now I'm in Palm Desert, but the desert is really part of my soul and being, having lived there most of my life, lived here most of my life. And I was in a cabin of a friend who lives in Joshua Tree by myself trying to write. The skies were smoky and gray, and even red and ominous. And I just suddenly had this idea of, I used to work as a firefighter. So I thought, what can I do now? I can't really go out there. I'd probably die in 5 minutes. But I thought poetry, that's the new firefighting. And we need to bring our state together through poetry because so many people here are going through so much. And I instantly thought of the beautiful poetry in the Fire and Rain Echo Poetry book. And then I thought about Molly's new anthology and reached out to my co-editor, Lucille Langday, and said, we should do a reading. She's like, yeah. And then she said, we should invite Molly and we should do a big one together. And I'm like, yeah. And so we all had a Skype session, FaceTime, Zoom, I'm sorry, where we got together like we all are here now. And we talked for a long time and just said, we have to do this. And we got about doing it. I would like to credit Molly and Lucy because they did most of the legwork, and especially in the last few weeks after my father passed away, and I've been a little bit of a vegetable. So thank you so much to Lucy and Molly, and also to Katie for working so hard with all the details and bringing us together. I would like to now turn this over to my co-editor of Fire and Rain, Lucille Langday. She's going to speak to you.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to all of you who are joining us today. And also thank you to Katie Porter for hosting this event through Inlandia Institute. 9 years ago in 2011, I got the idea for an anthology of poems about California ecosystems. And I started gathering poems way back then, and that ultimately that book became Fire and Rain, Eco Poetry of California. I trained as a biologist before I became a poet, and so I I was aware of climate change and other environmental issues, and I wanted the book to address that. But I also wanted to create a book that celebrates the beauty and diversity of California ecosystems. So I had this idea, but I couldn't really bring it to fruition until Ruth joined me as a co-editor. And it was really our partnership that enabled us to take this book from the idea stage to the finished book. So I'm very grateful to Ruth for that. The book is divided into 8 sections corresponding to major bioregions of California, such as coast and ocean, coastal redwoods, and desert. And Ruth and I decided to call the book Fire and Rain because fire and rain are so important in shaping all California ecosystems. And we liked the James Taylor song, and we decided, well, James Taylor was just going to have to share this title with us because it was the right one for our book. And as it turns out, fire has a good and normal role to play in California ecosystems. There were fires here long before there were people, mostly started by lightning. But due to human activity now, things have gotten completely out of hand in California. We've just had our worst fire season ever. I think that this book is more timely and urgent now than ever. Thinking back to 9 years ago when I first got this idea, it's more important than ever. But above and beyond gathering excellent poetry and raising awareness of environmental issues, Ruth and I also wanted to do more for the environment with this book. So we're giving all of the profits from sales of the book to 7 environmental organizations. So now I'm pleased to turn this back to Ruth Nolan, who is going to start the poetry reading with one of her poems from the book.
Thank you, Lucy. As I begin to read my poem from Fire and Rain, Eco Poetry of California, it's about firefighting. I spent 6 summers fighting fires all over the Western US. And I'm getting ready to pitch my memoir about firefighting this next week. And it's taken me about 5 years to get the nerve up to do it. So send me a good vibe because I'm hoping this will spread awareness about firefighting and how hard firefighters work. The poem is called Mopping Up. It's the most unraveled and well-paying job I've had, fighting fires in far-flung, lonely wilderness areas, all the way from the San Bernardino National Forest to the Panamint Mountains near Death Valley, the East Mojave National Preserve, the Panamint Mountains near Death Valley, the Southern Sierra, Yosemite, Trinity Alps, the San Gabriels looming jagged above LA. And most of the time I was the only female on the crew, cutting fire line, sucking down smoke. And after a fire had laid down across ravaged meadows and once forested slopes, our job was far from done. We'd hike in baked potato, hot ankle-deep ash that blew eerily in the wind like shed snakeskins, to finish off dying wildfires by stirring and cooling the molten detritus with shovels. We sprayed dribbles of water from the fat bags that sloshed like heavy vertigo on our backs, also known as piss pumps. We struggled to keep pace in the slowed down underbelly of burned up things in cherished, little known Golden State geographies with lonely names. Rattlesnake Mountain, Horse Thief Spring, Last Chance Range, Toro Peak. And above us as we worked, the whispered remains of familiar trees, lurking black and tall and ragged, stripped of the dignity of their given names. Jeffrey Pine, Ponderosa, Western Sequoia, California Black Oak. Very little we could recognize. And at our feet, the complete bequeathing of the latter fuels. Manzanita, Western Juniper, Coyote Brush, Poison Oak. We could never be sure if a wildfire was completely out. So for days and days, we would stir ash, sifting through what had been scorched, and watched each unearthed ember spark hot and red, then whoosh into its desperate last breath. So this is what I remember most vividly from my firefighting days. The mopping up, making sure the fire was put to bed, soothing the fevered brow of forsaken landscapes to cool them down. That, and how often the guys on the crew, including my future daughter's father, asked me why I'd left behind the apron of my domesticity to flirt with flames instead of them. I'd like to introduce our next reader. Thank you, Thea Gavin.
Hi, I'm going to be reading two poems from the anthology. The first one is called Fire Cycle. And it has two parts. One, early October 2007. 20 months of Sundays, the succulent battery loses its green charge. Prickly pear pads yellow into thin wrinkles, fleshy Dudley of fingertips darken into talons. The leathery ones gathered on north slopes, laurel sumac, toyon, lemonade berry, fold up some, wait for the clouds to call. Shorter members of the south-facing mosaic shrug off their shriveled leaves, sagebrush, mallow, monkey flower. Who can recognize skeletons? 20 months, 2.2 inches of rain. Drop storms, swing south for a while. We are rattled by the Santa Ana winds. We want our fat shadows back. 2, 28,000 acres later. In Limestone Canyon, where the thing began, monster ignited, fed by the devil's breath of shrieking Santa Ana winds. That was October. This is June. Defeated oaks, 4 times my age, have crumpled since. A bleak pretense at leaves marks the survivors. Mustard and oatgrass bully their way up slopes, but if you learn to look, sweet native plants hum with juicy life. Scarlet silene and blue erigeron are stars in the universe of dust. Farewell to spring spreads its lavender lament along the trail. And I have one other one from the anthology called Definitely Home. Riparian, willow and mule fat congregations, noon's withering glance rebuked. In the cathedral of sycamore arches, yellowthroat choirs join in, jubilant. Slope effect. How green follows north folds. No fence line created this contrast. Half hills quilted with laurel sumac. Quail embroider the curvaceous air. Drought deciduous. In dry times, leaves retreat, not skeletons, but patient dancers. Wait for winter's sweet beating rain drums. Who can hold on till then? Vernal pools. Ephemeral home of spadefish toads. No fish survive summer's dust, just round rainbows of wildflowers doomed to recede, recede, recede. Chaparral. Look out, California's wild identity, the opposite of Disneyfication. Old growth elfin forest licked like frosting by tongues of wildfire. Thank you. I'm sorry, my bad. I forgot to introduce Trina Gainan.
Landscapes, San Fernando Valley. Late winter, El Rio de Los Angeles runs brown and fast, half-filled canal, river straightened, cement-lined arroyo, no sluicing of earth to allow sunlight's reach for visions, rock narratives. For a moment, raindrops slide down the window, pound the roof. Wind flitters, locust branches against redwood needles, green, deep. Rain ends, canal waters slow. Green muck growing on top, thick enough to support a tennis ball. At the locked gates to the pass along our concrete rivers, shopping carts line up. Home goods, Petco, Toys R Us. Some clean, some filled with construction waste. Are the roads filled with unpiloted carts after dark? Walmart's a long haul from here. It's a long way to come for a soak in the canal or a lift home in a rattletrap truck. Unmapped passages in every dimension, the ones in the sky not visibly marked, but a crow, more mobile than the wood dove, who sings the same song in the same place all day long, or even the woodpecker who hammers his way through the neighborhood. Crow knows how crowded the sky's roads are. 790 feet above mean sea level. Heat instigates jacaranda explosions, petals underfoot, prompts ants to trail up, yet quiescent sweet shrubs glare through open shutters, searching for the old desert. Amundsen Ranch, Rattler survives wildfire. Later, summer heat draws him out of grass to the dirt path. Wildflowers cover the charred land, except blackened trunks of oak. We could stand up to our knees in their dry savor. We turn back. Sycamores leaning, one season, green leaves unfurling. Then deep shadow and tall dried grasses. Next, leaves that span 2 hands width, falling, ending with broad sculpture of trunks and branches. Dawn, marine layer. Cottontail bounds across the soccer field. Possum is last night's roadkill. Bird count. In the canal, 3 mallard hens, 2 crows. 1 mallard hen with 6 chicks. Will they find their way to the jacuzzi like last year's brood? Green in its season, the garlands of algae succumb to the heat, revealing sandbars forming in clear canal water. Please welcome Liz Gonzalez.
Fall in the chaparral. Santa Ana winds howl down Cajon Pass. I sleep on the edge, my side of the bed, not to disturb. You snore on the couch. Gusts plow calico-hued hillsides. Filigree bones of a scrub jay's wing snuggle in the shadow box you made to save the memory. Flailing yucca swords slash the moonlight. A battery-operated clock glows on the mantle. Electricity is unreliable during winds and quakes. Bitter breeze whistles through window cracks. Your Granny Smiths rot in the glued back together anniversary bowl. You don't notice the smell. Brittlebush bows, Christmas berry slants, rattles. I scrub pomegranate specks off the carpet before you spot them. A coyote crouches behind beaver tail cactus, ready to pounce on a jackrabbit. We waste hours bickering like tumbleweeds bouncing aimlessly in the cactus garden. Dry leaves crumble so easily, veins can't sustain them. Our tromps back and forth shake the wood floor, startle snakes slithering beneath the foundation. Manzanita bushes thrash as though they want to uproot and bolt. We snap our love like weak branches cracking off eucalyptus trees. You brush shards of us into a dustpan. Add a spark to the drying landscape, uncontrollable wildfire will result. Flames cleanse the soil of allelopathic compounds, clear space for new growth. Buds curl dry on branches. Cinder does not disintegrate. We toast Thanksgiving from opposite ends of our new glass table. Fall quickens. And now, Karen Greenbaum Maya is the next reader.
Thank you, Liz. Here we go. Standing ovation. Pale orange light carved by tree leaves make sherbet triangles on the sidewalk. Creamsicle orange, then orange crush. Smoke billows up, soft and dirty. A standing ovation you can see from Vegas. LA, every live act gets a standing ovation. Air smells of ashtrays, old fireplaces. Ash sifts down, lays a rash of fine grit. You find it on everything's skin, black dander. The sun is an overripe guava. The sun is a fake harvest moon. The moon fakes an eclipse. Neighbors thought they didn't have to run, thought they could face off the fire, thought somehow it would leave them standing, thought we'd return with their standing ovation. Nothing alive still stands. Charred dirt, the trees stripped pillars, bleached by the firestorm. Running shoes melted, dishwasher skeletons, orange trees become coals piled for barbecue. Hills hot orange heaps that smolder by night. Live coverage from Melrose, Hollywood, Vegas. Ash sifts over everything's skin, black dander. The sun is an overripe guava. Burnt hills are a standing ovation. Now in a different vein. Many waters. What a rush to discover postcard Mediterranean and glacier deeps light up the same blue. Glaciers loom ancient, yet only recent as Lascaux Basin, Glaciers loom ancient, yet only recent as Lascaux Bison stampeding on stone, ice ages still piling and ebbing, futures our bodies almost remember. This year, 2 miles into mountains, nothing but the drift of sun-dried scree. 20 years back, I'd stopped and stepped over the shoulder right onto a glacier's latest snow, drenched in that blue made of air fled from cities, lakes, lungs. Outside turned inward, the most private blue on earth. I'd filled my hand with water, a gift. I lifted, I sipped. Blue so pure it lit me up as though I'd gulped a star. And now I'd like to introduce Lori Klein.
Thank you, Karen. So powerful. My poem also is about burning, relational as well as literal. It's on page 223 for anyone following along, and I'll be abridging the 5 sections to honor our time frame. In conflagrante, 1. Mile after mile, the torched chaparral, its sole pulse, an itinerant cricket. Arson and ozone, the tarry smolder of the creosote bush, the broken family of mesas. 2. In the time it takes to smoke that menthol super slim, eucalyptus passed into memory. 3. Maybe the ground remembers, like the scored rind of a melon. Take what you need, it says. And what could be sultrier after ooh la la, forbidden love than rain? Rain, don't go away. Bare limbs recall joy they were shaped for, while 18 threads of April tether the sheltering motel eaves to the patient soil. Afterglow is an eye in the dark, the shared cigarette. 4. Heat rips through the chemise, flickers up the canyon. 50 tongues funnel into a roar, ravishing in its concentration. Somebody lit that stream bed's wick. 5. Seen from the chopper, kissing the fire scar, spits of rain and terrain like the wrong side of a blanket. Where is the bunch grass now? The sage, the scrub oak, and that cricket, a pulse, a plea. Oh, world, these feet of clay. Please welcome our next reader, T.M. Lawson.
Just a quick note, I don't see TM here, so we're going to move ahead to Stephanie Noble. Stephanie, where are you?
Right here.
Here we go. Moving on. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read from the anthology, In This Land of Wind and Tinder. My scoop of ice cream, crowned with a curl of black ash, drifted down from the forest fire 15 miles away. Cafe owner says 14,000 acres burned so far today. Next morning, 44,000, uncontained, heading this way. Ranger says to evacuate, so we pack up and drive down through Smoky Angels Camp, where we pass fire engines from the southern cities of Indio and Palm Desert, rushing to aid. Achy hearts hold them tender in this land of wind and tinder. Next day at home, again, a fiery red sun to our north Middletown burns to the ground. Along with my donation, I send blessings in this land of wind and tinder, where the oaks and laurels on our hillside go almost yellow with the strain, and I pray for calm, air, and rain in this land of wind and tinder. And then it became a habit of writing a fire poem every year, unfortunately. So in 2017, the Sonoma-Napa County fires, this one is called Ouroboros. Acres of chimneys, towering tombstones, after 14 wind-whipped fires consumed all in their path, helpless to stop gorging. Don't we all choose survival, even fires? When the last two flames met, they consumed each other like a snake swallowing its tail. And then finally, the perch, as we're all looking forward to January. Dense ground fog of January's cold, bare black oak, a deeper gray, where birds blend in like lingering leaves, then lift off to melt into mist. The highest limb has a gnarly top, a jutting branch, a right angle lop. An amateur hacked some years back, a failure revealed only in winter. That awkward knob is an ideal perch for birds of prey, just the way a once botched dream turns out to be the very one that suits us. And now I'd like to introduce Kathy Sandstrom.
Kathy, unmute yourself, please.
There. Sorry, totally unrehearsed. Like Stephanie, this is a fire poem that is from an earlier year, and it was just repeated. We were under evacuation watch for over a week from the Bobcat fire. I live up against the San Gabriels. September wildfire, Los Angeles Basin. Hot, black night. The mountain crowned with fire. Air so heavy with smoke, dawn sun's a dulled fuchsia disk on gray. An icon from a Japanese print I could stare into. Imagine its corolla leaping like the flames I saw from the freeway. 3rd grade, 9th Avenue School, Columbus. We have finished making our Ohio-shaped booklets of the rivers, burial mounds, pioneers, and now we are scissoring the Mimeo purple outlines of maple and oak leaves, traced onto construction paper, orange, yellow, red, and brown. We'll cut them again, tape them to the windows as if they are falling. Golda Auchenreith, spinster, a pillar in her old lady's lace-up Oxfords, her good black dress. Behind her, a flurry of leaves. We sit hushed, hands folded, while she reads aloud poems about the color and crispness of fall, season of harvest, the brisk air laden with the fragrance of burning leaves. Ash on the kitchen counter. Flecks of white on the dark book I laid down. Black on the pale cutting board, gray on the blue tiles. The windows opened louvers furred with a fine dust. The blaze doubled in size last night. Outside, leaves sag on the Chinese elm. We breathe manzanita and sage, fell and feather. The fire pushes wildlife before it 25 miles east along the San Gabriels. 30 years since a burn. Please welcome Judith Terzi.
Thank you, Kathy. This is also about fire in the San Gabriels, the Angeles National Forest. 2009, station fire. The road to Buckhorn. It starts halfway up, this aftermath of fire, risen from ash, from arson, lavender forest, overgrowth of turricula, poison, wildfire. Sharp-toothed leaves and blossoms bend against limbless poles of bighorn spruce, coulter pine, risen from ash, from arson, lavender forest. This air infused with char recalls the crime, the feet of flame, Santa Ana scorch and howl, limbless poles of Douglas fir and coulter pine. Saplings planted high in drought-drenched soil are gone. Do beak beats revive the cloth of bark? Feet of flame, Santa Ana scorch and howl. Yet larkspur and goldenrod delude the dark, and monkey flower, Spanish broom and sage. Do woodpecker beats revive the cloth of bark? My mind returns to clothing in the afterphase of life. Polyester remains as if my mother were still alive, and monkey flower and sage, her dresses and blouses hanging in closets lure. It starts halfway up, this aftermath of fire, of death. Polyester remains of my mother, overgrowth of turricula, wild fire flower. And now let's welcome Lucille Lang Day again.
I'm going to read a poem of mine from the appendix of Fire and Rain. It's called History of the Biosphere. And it's in an essay that I wrote about poetry and science. And it puts environmental devastation into the context of the evolution of life on Earth. History of the Biosphere. At first, no redwoods scraped the sky with pointed leaves, no globular cones on ultimate twigs turned slowly from green to brown as they ripened. And no calliope hummingbirds with red streaked throats and slender beaks probed the necks of tubular flowers. There was no oxygen, just a boiling sea where gases streamed from the Earth's core. Millennia passed and membranes formed on rocks until self-replicating sacs were cells, insensate, sulfur metabolizing. The Earth cooled and countless generations of cells tumbled through the centuries. Then chloroplasts exhaled oxygen at last over oceans and land. The seas filled with sponges, anemones, and corals where crabs could hide and brightly colored fish could practice dances to attract mates, long before the first uncertain creatures crept out to deposit eggs in crystalline sand. Now ribosomes and chromosomes repeat the story, and humans with neurons tangled like a rainforest and 3 billion nucleotides lined up in their DNA gather round the fire to listen while the sky darkens with carbon and the planet with its orchids, figs, rubber trees, calliandras, and ferns, under canopies dense with hanging lianas, trembles as it burns and burns. So I think whether the devastation is a burning rainforest in the Amazon or a fire that started because of climate change in California, this destruction is not what we want as the culmination of 4 billion years of evolution of life on Earth. And now Molly Fisk will, there's one more thing I want to say before Molly comes on, and that's that I just want to thank the Fire and Rain poets for your great readings. You were all really terrific, and I'm hearing some of you for the first time, and it's truly a wonderful treat. And now we'll hear from Molly Fisk, who will tell us about her anthology, California Fire and Water.
Thanks, Lucy. Here is California Fire and Water, a climate crisis anthology. I'm so glad that the Inlandia Institute and Katie wanted to have us here today. And thanks, Lucy, for having this good idea of melding our anthology readings together. It's been just beautiful to listen to everything. This book contains 145 poems by Californians from the ages of 8 to 85. It's part of a project I did, having gotten a Poets Laureate Fellowship from the Academy of American Poets. Three-part project. We put teachers from California poets in the schools into classrooms all over the state, had them help kids write poems about climate crisis. Although when we started, we were calling it climate change. Now it's climate crisis. Then we gathered some of their poems and had a call out for submissions to adults and mixed those poems together, produced the anthology. And then the third part of the project was going to be 20 readings all over the state that were supposed to happen in April. And you know what happened instead. So we had no readings at all. And it took a while to sort of regroup and try to figure out how to get this information back on the path, how to sort of start another reading series. I had to evacuate from the Jones Fire here in Nevada City, so there were some interruptions that made a lot of sense given what the work that we were doing with the book. I've gotten a lot of response from the book. You know, you tell people, here's this nice book about horrible things, and they're like, oh, thanks so much, I don't think I want that book. But in fact, I've gotten a lot of response from people about how much resilience there is and how much solace there is in hearing poems about disaster and recovery from disaster. And lots of people from out of the area, out of California and out of the range of Western fires have said that both with this book and with others, there's a way that you can feel through poetry that you can't feel through the news cycle. You can't feel by seeing photographs and video clips of what's going on. To some extent, those are too scary and too, they're not exaggerated, but just seeing a minute of them in the middle of your lunch hour is an exaggerated way to think about them. And so to have this type of personal response from so many different angles and so many different ages of people and people's different experience has been a really wonderful way to help the people who aren't in the middle of this kind of disaster feel what it's like for us. Just briefly, you can order this book at any independent bookstore, and it's available at all the usual places online, which I will not give any advertising time to. You can get it from me at mollyfisk.com. A percentage of the profits goes to produce copies to give to California public schools, public libraries, and prison libraries. And another percentage is donated to the Nisenan tribe, on whose unceded land I live and work here in Nevada County in Northern California. We're going to have this half of the reading start with Cynthia Anderson, because she's kind of a fulcrum here. She has poems in both of these anthologies. So Cynthia, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Molly. First, I'll read my poem from Fire and Rain. And this is called Joshua Tree Weeping. This is after a photograph by Beth Moon. Shoshone call them Wiccoba, broken ones. They give easily, bedeviled by heavy branches that collapse at critical mass. But this ritual sacrifice is not why the Joshua tree weeps. It's the final death underway, species loss due to climate change. Too much heat, too little rain, choking smog. There's no debate. Science claims most desert forests will succumb in this century, that nothing can be done. In some places, infant mortality is already complete. Yet as long as its weathered trunk remains upright, this tree lets the sun turn clusters of spiked leaves to silver. That's how it would be remembered, not fallen, not bent with grief. And this next poem is in the California Fire and Water, and the title is What is the Question? It has an epigraph from Viktor Frankl. The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Strong winds blow in from the backcountry, bearing ash from a wildfire gone cold. The fine gray haze obscures sky and sun, proof that events we thought were over follow us into the meditation loft where we sit, inviting our minds to be still. Woodpeckers drill straight into the building. Backhoes beep from the service yard below. Loose metal flaps against the roof. Vast questions like, why are we here, shrink to, how can we stand it? Most eyes stay closed, willing to prove that our minds can go blank for 1 second, no matter how the world shocks us or insists on uprooting our calm. And the next reader is Lisa Alvarez.
Hi. Thank you. Almost a month ago, like thousands of Californians, my family and neighbors left our home as the Silverado fire exploded. It was the 6th, maybe 7th time we've evacuated over the decades. Each time we leave sooner, take less, and go further. And I think that might be the first line of a new poem that I haven't written yet. Leave sooner, take less, go further. I just want to say it's so good. It feels so good to be back at home in such good company today. Thank you for all your poems. Today, I'll be sharing 2 poems from the anthology, beginning with my own, a sonnet, not about fire, but about drought, one of fire's causes, composed from a seasonal journal that I kept during the recent drought years. Drought sonnet. While waiting for the river to rise from its dry sleep, some stacked stone cairns taller than their children in the dusty bed. Great fields of lupin bloomed blue in the parched margins where the river once met the alpine lake. That fall, acorns dropped early, impatient, angry visitors knocking on roofs, white, fibrous hearts splintered underfoot. No blackberries, no apples. Great oaks drop branches on dreaming children below. Her brother died in the last wet year, drowned face down on the riverbank where, as children, they launched fleets of bark boats with sails of dry leaves. The next poem is a poem written by Sophia Lee, who was in 5th grade at West Portal Elementary School in San Francisco when she wrote Secrets. It's one of my favorites in the anthology for its hope. Secrets. The glistening white moon taught me how to sleep at night. The golden sun taught the world to rise during the bumpy dawn. The shaking forest has secrets to tell you. You are strong. Don't give up. You can make it through. That's Sophia Lee, everyone, telling us to be strong and make it through. And now, please welcome the Poet Laureate of Santa Barbara, Laura-Ann Bossler.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. Thank you. Powerful voice you have. I'd like to start with a poem by Rafael Jesus Gonzalez, a beautiful poem about the moon. In Spanish, the moon is feminine. You might want to know that before I read it. Full moon in a dry summer. The full moon rises with a reddish tint from the smoke of the forests burning. In the drought, the waters she would lift grow scarce, scarce as the salmon in the streams. Her color, it would seem, is that of the disquiet of our blood. Rafael Jesus Gonzalez, beautiful poem. And my poem is called Sundowner Wind. 3 days now, and the sundowner stubborn, a hot hiss in the jacaranda. It's in bloom. There's no blue like this one, dusted by drought and dusk, but flowering all it can, raising its fists to the other blue, up there, sun-fraught, contrailed, hazed and exhausted with light, but there, unfailingly there. The streets are empty, but for the mockingbird on a roof, he too doing all he can, singing to the scorched mountains, pockmarked by the tea fire. The sundowner danced with that fire for days, its flames still a rage in my old friend's eyes. She lost all she had to it. I think of her often, bent over, sifting pottery shards from her house's ashes and finding solace there. Solace, my God, in so little. The sun is down, the wind dies in the street. I thumb the 2 wedding bands on my finger, have them do their little dance together, tiny rings in a stillness that can't silence everything. I'm happy to introduce to you Brandon Sema.
The title of this poem is Firemind. It's about the Paradise Fire. October firestorm rolls west over the rim of Eden Creek Canyon. Smoke from hundreds of homes, barns, photos, and lives of 21 neighbors, royals and incense of white sage. Sacred to tribal people on 2 reservations, now ablaze, their outlawed spring burns resurrected brutally in autumn. Recognizing the ghost of smoke releases me to accept losing everything, so that when our house emerges after fire, only planks of patio aflame, I resist calling it blessing. That night, hot spots burn around Canyon, the only lights there until neighbors rebuild. Power lines burned like fuses, exploding suburbs in brush. And above spot fires, stars, calling back thousands of others, dark, insisting. The second day after fire, I walk the rim, first time in 20 years, consoling neighbors I'd never met as they sift ashes over concrete foundations. I trespass freely to the east, catch 5 goats, 2 pigs and a cat with burnt paws. I shoot 2 horses without hooves, their lungs singed, the blood they breathe, the only moisture within miles. I shoot into another mind that becomes mine, the fire, the rifle, my hand, the bullet. I follow a trajectory heartless as flames over so many. The next week at a funeral, people flow through my arms. I survive to hold them, open my cage of ribs. Their sobs become my heartbeat, their tears my blood, my warmth from pressure of motion, the same heat Santa Ana's rays crossing the Mojave. The town weeps itself dry while I wonder, where are my tears of survival? Each March, I burn brush, the flame at the match tip, the shape of an orange tear. Neighbors watch. Every spring, a warning. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the poet laureate of Altadena, Teresa May Chuck.
Thank you, Brandon. I grew up in the Cajamonga area, which is the territory of the Tongva people, the original caretakers of the land. And I have been surrounded by fire all of my life. Most recently, the Bobcat fire. We were under evacuation warning for about 2 weeks. I'm going to read 2 poems. First, my poem in the anthology, and then a poem by Kim Shuck. Fire haiku. My heart, the Santa Ana winds today. Branches fall to the ground. Always Fire Season by Kim Shuck. Flame reads the stories of tree rings out loud for the last time. Thursday, our kitchen fire alarms went off. Breathing lives as we were breathing the collected things of lives, the fur and claws, the feathers, the ID cards and photographs and pocket lint. Here in the Bay, our sunrises and sunsets have changed. Extreme wildfires, part of the new normal weather, and always fire season. We know the forests by when they burned, whose ashes on our windshield, whose ashes in our skin, in our lungs. The cars, immobile, fused into the melted roadway. Less rain, cracked lips of hillside, flaking skin of flood plain, and the dice roll of pet sparks, conditionally captured in wire, running the dry west, curled and silvered fingers of pine as monument. Now I'd like to introduce Amy Elizabeth Davis.
Amy, unmute yourself. Amy.
Amy? Amy?
Unmute yourself, please.
I had unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yes. Thank you. Technology. It's okay.
I actually hit it a while ago. So this is a poem by one of the remarkable, very young people whose work Molly gathered for this anthology. She was then a 4th grader at Cleveland Elementary School in Oakland, and her name is Twyla Hoshida, and her poem, called Dreaming of Fire, kind of encapsulates everything. 1, I am the embers of a flame. From the wind, I learned to spark like a star when the breeze blows. The wind taught me to move like a flash of lightning, to move and burn the grass. When I move, I dream of fire spreading throughout the land. 2, I am the storm destroying everything, blowing over the earth like a colossal fan at top speed, twirling my fingers through the clouds, kicking off water like an angry beast. I am destruction. And this is my poem written in my house on Tongva land. It's called After the Peddlers Disappeared. I bundle torn clothes, but the ragmen have stopped stopping by. No horses with carts bring milk or come to sharpen knives. A different coast, a century turned, and the voice of a grandchild all push history further back. Bad fiction once told us the churning planet would split this coast from the continent, send its collapsed geology into the Pacific. Now, we reasonably expect water to come ashore, splay over lowlands, push deeper into the interior. Or maybe not. Perhaps our doom will not arrive with rising oceans after all. We thought this winter would go thirsty, but up and down the block, arc frames sprout in yards. Rain feeds brush that quilts mountains with tinder, ready to explode when drought and lightning next mix. After fire season, denuded slopes will launch mud, and mud will rip houses from foundations. The room grows chill, wheels slosh beyond the windows. Dirt and rock travel in small amounts, not only by landslide. Perhaps the storm drains that open onto every street will carry the hills by grain and pebble into the water. California will trickle into the tide. Rain will wash us and wash us away. The sky turns up the volume. I find an outgrown sweatshirt in the pile headed for recycling, drape its skateboard insignia across my cold shoulders. I must caulk by wipers. Puddles spread and rise. Tomorrow, toadstools will cover the lawn. I might need new boots after all. And the next poet is Kim Dower.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely, so lovely to be here. I'm going to start with a poem from the anthology written by a third grader named Quinn Arthur, and she goes to Francis Scott Key Elementary School in San Francisco. The heat against my face. If I were an owl, I would fly fast through the gray, silky willow trees at dusk. I would watch the copper-colored stream flow at sunrise. I would watch a fox hunt rabbits at midnight. I would soar through a river with drips of water passing my flapping wings. I would even fly through the burning fire in the sizzling sun with the heat against my face. The universe taught me this bravery. Third grader, the universe taught me this bravery. My poem in the anthology, I'm so much luckier than so many of you and so many people in that I live in West Hollywood on the flats, and we don't have that danger of having to evacuate. We just smell the smoke and feel the heat and the terror of so many loved ones in our state. My poem is called It's So Hot, I'm Getting Stupid. It's so hot. I just opened a can of tuna with my teeth. I forgot there were can openers, was surprised to taste the fish oil mingling with my blood, open cuts on my lips and mouth. We'll do things under extreme conditions, step inside of horses when we're freezing, fall in love with murderers. I would kill for you, I tell my children. and I would. I have made bad decisions today in the heat. I climbed the pole outside my window, hoping for a breeze. When I fell onto the moving car, the driver and I locked eyes before I tumbled off. I am not dead. I am having lunch, a bowl of cream. The driver is traveling north, strands of my hair plastered onto his windshield. And I have the great pleasure of introducing the editor of this beautiful anthology, Molly Fisk.
Unmute yourself, Molly.
Thank you. This is called Heat, a poem by Ruth Bavetta from San Clemente. And the sun said, let there be fire, and there was fire. And the fire said, let there be wind, and the wind was throbbing, and the beast of the flames pulled taut over the hills, said naught to the chaparral, and nil to the coyote. And the coyote ran, and the rabbits ran, and the deer, and the rattlesnake, and the quail ran, and the wind sprang from its kiln, and tongue-licked the eaves, and the rafters, and the roof. And the smoke was air, and the air was smoke. The air was our bodies. It was our shadows against the sky. And here's particulate matter. If all you counted were tires on the cars left in driveways and stranded beside the roads, melted dashboards and taillights, oil pans, window glass, seatbelt clasps, the propane tanks in everyone's yards, though we didn't hear them explode, R13 insulation, paint inside and out, the liquor store's plastic letters in puddled colors below their charred sign. Each man-made sole of every shoe in all those closets. The laundromat's washers' round metal doors. But then Arco, Safeway, Walgreens, the library, everything they contained. How many miles of electrical wire and PVC pipe swirling into the once blue sky? How many linoleum acres? Not to mention the valley oaks, the ponderosas, all the wild hearts and all the tame, their bark and leaves and hooves and hair and bones, their final cries, and our neighbors, so many particular, precious, irreplaceable lives that despite ourselves, we're inhaling. Please welcome Suzanne Lummis.
Myself, I hope I muted myself. Here I go. There. Oh boy, I am not in high def, am I? Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm a little too glittery, a little too sparkly and indistinct. I look better indistinct anyway. Molly, thank you. Thank you, Molly and Lucille and Ruth, for your beautiful projects and the work that you have pulled together. I have been feeling very cynical about not only the state of the world, but the nature of humanity. And with the beauty of your work and what you have done here today with these books, you have chipped away at my cynicism. I'm a little less cynical now, a little more hopeful. I'm going to read a poem by Ron Kirchie, and it's short and it's good. After Sun Yum Feng. Homesick for the wealth I once possessed, I drive through the best part of town. Beautiful children in white stand politely until a shadow opens their door. Miles away, a yellow airplane drops fire retardant on another conflagration. Here, a wisp of smoke rises from a chimney. Perhaps someone burning a love letter. I am such a fool. I pull to the curb and write this down anyway. And now for my poem in the anthology. And apparently I am here today on the behalf of water. I think everybody else has done fire. I grew up in water. It was frozen. Now it's starting to unfreeze. That's my story. And the title is also the opening line of the poem. It was 3 a.m., winter, and 9 miles from Truckee. And nobody better than I to tell you about the stillness of snow at that hour, the silence on the surface of the snow, and the snow beneath the snow, deep, white, like the black of deep space. What then in the 50s we called outer space. It exerted a pressure. Aliens popped out of it, or else the gravity of Earth reeled them into the frames of our TVs, turning in their silver discs. A girl in the rangy wood shingled lodge who no one knew better than I had been complaining out loud, I can't sleep, until her parents in the other small room called out, well, then pretend to sleep. But even then, age 11, she felt the weight of it, the past history of men, that long running fright show that begins at dawn and goes on after the last station is shut down for the night, and its screen fills with crackling, battering, unresting dots. Snow. What's on the other side, where space ends? Kids used to ask. Probably off-air snow. She did not imagine she wasn't that good. The final ravenous melt, the calving of glaciers, rivers swelling, seas rising, ice old and obdurate as stone, giving away as if it had held all along in the nuclei of its cells, like humans, the key to its own end. But she knew after the past would come the sci-fi scary future, maybe aliens. Did you think some might show up in this poem? In the Sierra Nevadas, off frozen Highway 40, in that small hour? No. Though some whisper they're watching as we grow more alien to each other and the earth. And even back then, 3 a.m., winter of 62, nothing on TV, the world over, only the peaceful slept. And the snow, the pure, numb, and numbing stuff, which knew nothing, or knew but didn't care. Now, Robert Crut, you'd better have something uplifting to follow that, because that was a bit of a downer. So So what do you got for us?
Maybe I'll start in that zone and I'll work to something uplifting for the second poem. That's what we'll do. Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Molly, for editing this wonderful anthology. I'm going to start with my poem from the anthology, which is Riverside, Rainside, Fireside. A flare when you cough words, a disappearing act when you dance. This rainstorm is from no cloud. The sun's exploded and sprays boiling water. Yes, I am talking about you. You whispered a secret into my ear and I spoke a piece of paper. I have built a tower designed to reverse lightning back to the sky. Your eyelashes pull toward the moon. Night's white pearl drowns the flames from your fingertips. Danger isn't a bomb. Danger is a drip. I will build 1,000 bridges if that's what it takes. The river is a tongue and the tongue is of a holy beast. Open your eyes, even if they have no iris. Your hand in my hand, your mouth in my ear. The rain won't stop and it won't stop burning. And then for the second poem, Suzanne, it's funny that you mentioned something uplifting because I'm going to read a Whitman poem that I turn to a lot during difficult times. And considering what we're talking about and reading about today, I thought that this might be worth sharing for my second poem. And this is On the Beach at Night Alone. On the beach at night alone, as the old mother sways her to and fro, singing her husky song, as I watch the bright stars shining, I think a thought of the cleft of the universes and of the future. A vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, all distances of place, however wide, all distances of time, all inanimate forms, all souls, all living bodies, though they be ever so different or in different worlds, all gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fish, the brutes, all nations, colors, barbarism, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe or any globe, all lives and deaths, all of the past, present, future. This vast similitude spans them and always has spanned and shall forever span them and compactly hold and enclose them. Thank you. Thanks. I believe we go back to our organizers. Thanks.
That was a beautiful prayer to end with, Bob. Thank you. We have some time for questions if anybody in the audience would like to ask them. I'm supposed to be in charge. I'll click on Q&A and see. There aren't any right now. Questions about the poems for the poets or for the editors, if you have questions about anthologies. Now I have a little sign that says my internet connection is unstable, which is probably true all the time, but every now and then it just shows me this. Just do a little typing into the Q&A box if you have a question and I'll read it out loud and somebody will answer it. Someone is raising a hand, but the way this is set up, I can't hear anybody. So you have to type it in as far as I know, unless Katie Porter has a better idea.
Hi, Molly. I know this person, so I'm going to let her talk. And maybe there's something wrong with the Q&A box.
Okay.
So let's see what's going on. Hi, Lydia.
All right.
You'll be able to talk now.
Lydia, what question?
Okay. Hi, I was just wanting to let you know that there was a question coming. What inspired, this is for Suzanne, the woman who had the pixels in her video. What inspired?
That she read about the space and, terrestrial, that one.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and did you ask me, I think I missed the second part, what inspired the poem called It Was 3 a.m. Winter, 9 miles from Truckee? Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked that question because this was a an area, a subject area, something that I wanted to write about, had in the back of my mind and was marinating for a very long time. I don't even know how long, but many years. I've had a hard time writing about my childhood. It was somewhat of an isolated childhood, except during ski season, when then there were a lot of people on the weekends. People would come up to the ski lodge. Other than that, it could be rather isolating. And I always thought that my childhood wasn't interesting enough. And then I began to think, no, there's things there. There's things very unusual about my childhood. And then the poet Henry Morrow, who founded the Pacific Coast Poetry Series that I am the editor of, with his and his wife's money. It's part of Beyond Broke Books. It's an imprint of Beyond Broke Books. And he now has a health issue which he's not going to recover from, and he's in a hospice. And to acknowledge him and pay tribute to him, Corinne Topal and I decided to pick fragments of his poems and write a poem, generate a poem out of that fragment to honor his memory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that it would not, his poetry would not die, it would be generated. And he also has a beautiful book, which Beyond Broke has, called the Zoot Suit Files. It's fabulous. It's brand new. He doesn't know, because he has gone into a state where he cannot recognize things. He does not even know that his book has been printed and is out there. It's kind of a tragedy, but he always wanted a new book. And so Corinne snipped up little bits of poetry, and we traded them off. And one of the little bits that she gave to me was, it was 3 a.m. winter. And as soon as I saw that, I was looking at all these little fragments. And when I saw that, I realized in that moment how I could write about my childhood. Sometimes if you give me the opening line, I get the whole tune. I get the whole song. Just give me that opening line and I can roll with it. I often work that way. And so I went, it was 3 a.m. winter, and I added, and 9 miles from Truckee. It was where the Donner Party came down, or those that had not died or eaten each other. A horrible story. My heart goes out to them. I know what it is to be cold and to be freezing. I'm so glad you asked that. I'm so glad, because you gave me the opportunity to talk about Henry in that process. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
I also like Molly Fisk. You're really fascinating. Just great. Your poem, the poetry, a poet. You know, it's just great. How you read it and just how you pick the specific ones. You know, that I gave for today. You know? Well, tonight, you know, it's because it's Pacific Coast and where we're at. But I enjoyed it. Actually, everybody. I heard almost about everybody. I just feel bad for I think her name is I was trying to remember. It's like she's Asian, I think, from Toga or something around there, or Hmong, or you know, she was telling about the tribe or something.
She was talking about a tribe.
Yeah, the fire that has been. She grew up around fire. Unfortunately, yes. And I had to zip out because I had to go to the restroom, but I missed it. But I try to go quick as possible. But I enjoyed it. Everything, everybody spoke. It was just great.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you,
Maria.
You're gonna have to get the book is all. That's where.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody had great work.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I know we have some poets in the audience, so don't be shy, because I see you.
I I also forgot to say that we are going to be doing more readings together in the spring. And in particular, we have one scheduled that will be Indigenous poets from both of the books. So there's more coming your way if you'd like to be with us. Also, yeah.
Molly, if you can hear me, it occurs to me Christmas is getting awfully close, and the classiest present you could give and the most economical is a beautiful anthology of poetry.
Or two wrapped up together.
Or an extra one in case they lend one to a friend who doesn't return it.
Absolutely.
So that reminds me, I'm just going to paste one more time into the chat how everybody can get a hold of these books. So do take the opportunity if you can. Do we have any further questions? Okay, well, if not, let me just kind of take it from here and thank you to everyone, especially to our editors who put together two fantastic bodies of work and all of the poets who contributed, and for offering Inlandia this opportunity to be able to present it to our audience. So thank you all for being here. For those of you who are new to Inlandia, we do host events like this on the weekly. So please do follow us on our social media pages. You can also send me an email at inlandia@inlandiainstitute.org if you'd like to find out more about how to get involved. So we will be back in this space again on December the 3rd on Zoom at 7 p.m. to launch Inlandia's latest publication, because we also do publish books, which is a short history of finding your first home in the United States. This is the long-awaited anthology on the immigrant experience in inland Southern California. So look for that on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter for the URL to RSVP, or just type tinyurl.com/immigrant anthology into your browser, and that will take you to the RSVP page. So thank you everyone for being here. And yeah, I'm going to put us on gallery view and see. I don't know if everybody can see us, but if you all would like to wave goodbye, this has been wonderful. And actually, keep that up for a second. Let me take a group photo. What do you think about that? Okay, keep waving, don't stop. Yay, all right. That's something I miss from all of our live events, is we don't ever have any pictures, but we do have recordings, and it will be up on YouTube. It's also been live streamed onto Facebook. So go find our Facebook page, share it with your friends, and look for it on YouTube in the next couple of days. And have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Katie.
And thank you too for hosting this event.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's very inspiring.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Lucille and Ruth and Molly and Katie.
Thank you, everybody, so much.
Katie?
Have a beautiful evening.
Katie?
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Ruth. And thank you, Katie.
Can you repeat the name of the anthology that you just...
A short guide to finding your first home in the United States. It is forthcoming in the next week or two. We are in progress. It has been ordered. So
Great.
thank you guys.
No.
And Brandon, while I have you here, this was a blast from the past. Brandon got this from one of our very early events, way back when Inlandia was just an infant. It has a totally different email and a PO box instead of a mailing address. And anyway, it was such a treat. The fact that you had it all these years and it landed in my mailbox. It was just like a time travel. So, all
Well,
right.
you know, I somehow ended up, Valley Center ends up on the Inland Empire map. I don't know how that happens.
It does. Well, because we are all of inland Southern California. We are not just Riverside, San Bernardino, but we spread out. So, all right, we'll see each other again.
Great to see you. Thanks, everybody.
All.
Thank you all.